Hi everyone and welcome to the tutorial. Today I'm going to be demonstrating how to work a knit below stitch. This is a stitch I've demonstrated already in a previous video, but then we were looking at how to work knit belows into purl bumps or purl stitches below our current row of stitches. And today I wanted to expand on that and show you what it looks like when you work a knit below into a knit stitch or a yarn over below your needle. It's still the same technique, it just looks a little different. When we work knit belows, we unravel our current stitch on the needle by one row, and this produces a lovely waffle-like texture that's desirable in certain stitch patterns. Or when we work a knit below into a yarn over, it can help to accentuate and increase the size of that yarn over, which is something that's also desirable in certain stitch patterns. So a knit below is really simple and it's often abbreviated to KB in our patterns. So you'll be told to, work X number of stitches, if that's in lace, if it's in cables, whatever, and then your pattern says to KB. So it means that into this next stitch is where I work my KB. What I'm looking for is not to insert my right hand needle into the stitch that's currently on the needle, but into the stitch just below it, which in the case of a knit stitch is this V that's here. We've got the left leaning leg of the V and then the right leaning leg of the V. So rather than inserting my needle here like normal, I insert into here. And this was the stitch that was worked in our previous row. So for a knit below, I simply take my right hand needle, insert straight through the middle of that stitch, wrap my working yarn around the needle as normal as if I was to knit, and then complete knitting this stitch as normal. So we pull the loop that's on the right hand needle through and we slip this stitch on the left hand needle off. And you'll see there how a little bit of an unravel happened. So I now have the yarn that I was knitting with in my previous row is sitting like a ladder behind the loop that's just here. And that was the stitch that was worked in our previous row. So we've unraveled it and we've created a sort of double thickness fabric, which has a lovely squishy characteristic. And that's all you do for a knit below into a knit stitch. We'll just see how that looks again. So I'll work to my next KB point, knit below, insert my needle into this V below the next stitch on my needle. So just here, we poke our needle through so it's going through to the wrong side of our work. Wrap the yarn around the needle as if to knit, and then complete knitting this stitch as normal, slide it off the left hand needle, and there it's unraveled, and that's our knit below. When we work a knit below into a yarn over, it's ever so slightly different because in the case of this yarn over, I actually worked it 2 rows ago. So instead of inserting into the stitch that was worked the previous row, it actually becomes 2 rows ago, because when we work a yarn over in our subsequent row or round, we sort of are just setting it in place and there's no V just below the needle. Instead, we've just got our big eyelet hole. So this is actually what I insert my right hand needle into. There's nothing here elsewise, just the stitch. So take the right hand needle, insert it into the yarn over or the eyelet hole that's been created, wrap the working yarn around the needle as if to knit, and then finish knitting as normal. And that's the knit below with a yarn over. The same thing has happened. We've unraveled it by a row, but you'll see that instead of creating a sort of waffle texture, we've really dramatically increased the size of the yarn over. This is a yarn over that hasn't had a knit below worked into it yet, and this is with it, and you'll see it's significantly larger. So let's see that one more time into that next yarn over. We'll just work to the point, and now my pattern says to knit below, insert the needle into that hole, wrap the working yarn around, finish knitting it, and there's our knit below. And that's all you have to do. When you get to your next row or round, you just work these stitches that are on the needle exactly as normal, and your knit below is completed. One thing to be mindful of with knit belows is, as I mentioned, you've actually unraveled a stitch by a row. So if I needed to undo my work because I've made a mistake, perhaps I put the knit below in the wrong spot or I just miscounted somewhere, I then actually need to re-knit the stitch. So if I just think back to where I put my knit below in and I undo that, I've now got 2 loops sitting on my needle, because one is the yarn over that was worked 2 rows ago, and the other is the yarn that was knitted into my work in the row after that. So if I want to fix this, this strand here is the yarn over, and this one here is the yarn from the subsequent row. So what I need to do is pass the yarn over, up and over that strand of yarn, or the ladder, and there I'm re-knitting it into my work, and there it's all fixed. And then if I wanted to work that as a knit below again, I can, exactly as before. Alternatively, if I wanted to put my knit below back in here, because I've actually put it in the exact right spot the first time I'd worked this knit below row, just undone it there, you actually don't need to re-knit the stitch. You only need to re-knit it if you put the knit below in the wrong spot. So in this case, I haven't re-knit any of that. I've left the yarn over and the ladder just sitting on the tip of my needle, so it looks like I've got 2 stitches. But when I work the knit below, I'm just going to work those 2 strands of yarn together, and essentially I'm doing the same thing as a knit below there. You can see it looks exactly the same as this one and how it all looked before. So that's only the case if, as I said, you put your knit belows in the exact right spot and you've undone the knit below row and you want to work that row again. Instead of bothering to re-knit the knit belows, you just, when you get to that point, work the yarn over and ladder together, or the stitch and ladder together if you were undoing a knit stitch knit below. And that just saves you the trouble of having to re-knit the stitch, because all you're going to do when you get to the knit below point again is just to essentially undo it again. So that's a knit below. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please feel free to subscribe to the channel. And if you have any questions or comments, please do leave them below.